some little jobs. This is kind of a bridging episode. I've been doing some of these great big projects that take multiple weeks to accomplish and film, and there has to be stuff that goes on between that's short and sweet, you know? Interesting in its own way, though, hopefully. I occasionally get people suggesting things that I should record, and it's a weird balance, man. There's stuff I'm doing right now that I don't want to film because it's repetitive and it's things you've seen before. Like a refret on a guitar I featured a few months back. Player got it home, he really loves the instrument, and realized that I wasn't joking when I said that the frets were exceptionally low. He wanted to try them out, see if it was okay. They're not okay, so doing a refret. Pretty standard stuff. I've got a couple of jobs I can't film because the owner isn't interested in having his valuable guitars featured online. That's a choice that people make, and there are reasons that they have, and I respect that. I took the jobs on because I figured I was, uniquely qualified to work on these things. And I almost didn't want to see someone else have to try. There are also other people who are, over anxious to have their guitar show up in a video to the point where it becomes a red flag. There's a danger that YouTube people are faced with. We have to keep to a schedule. It can be very costly to take time off or deviate from the usual upload days and times. The clankers get cranky. But there's also a demand for novelty that can be a bit of a trap and can lead people into taking on jobs or coming up with projects for themselves that are more and more bizarre. Shock value for the thumbnail image, if you know what I mean. From my observations, that can be a quick trip to Burnout City. It's very difficult to sustain. I've always felt very lucky that my audience is, by and large, very supportive and understanding that this is kind of a short weekly view into what I'm working on. And you get to hang out with me for a little while in the shop and look over my shoulder. It's all very low-key. It's not really a how-to. Some weeks are exciting and some weeks are, well, it's another fret job. Welcome to the world of repair, kid. If it's not already evident, we're going to start off with this Fender Stratocaster. It's a beautiful color. Really like that. This is a custom shop, something, early 60s reissue relic. The owner says this is from 2004. I'll take his word for it. Dating Fender custom shop stuff can be tricky because their serial numbers don't follow their usual patterns. Looking them up online is not really possible. And I'm not about to go send an email to Fender to find out for sure. It gives every indication of being a 60-year-old guitar that's 20 years old. Main issue, frets are getting a little worn, a little divoted. Areas are quite flat because of bending. And yeah, it's time for a fret dress. What's the reason for a fret dress? Well, usually it's to reestablish the top surface of the frets into a single plane. That can make things a little less buzzy, a little more even. Also reestablish intonation points in extremely flat frets. The point at which the string contacts the fret can shift from the center to one or the other side, which can cause tuning issues. Occasionally, of course, we see significant divots forming in the surface of the fret, usually around the first position. Strangely, those don't often cause as much of an issue as having severely flat frets higher up the neck. It's unsightly, but usually you can go quite a ways before they start to be a problem. Eventually, as the fret gets worn down, your fingers and the string start grinding against the fretboard, causing a little hole behind the fret to increase the pressure, and it sort of goes back and forth until such time that there's no fret left and you're essentially playing fretless, which might be cool to some people, but usually we want to catch them before they reach that stage. Action on this guitar is on the lower side of normal, just over 3/64 on the bass side, and 3/64 exactly on the treble. I don't think this is a vintage radius on this board. I'll check it when the strings are off. Ordinarily you'd want a little bit more neck relief in a vintage 7 1/4. This has got, I guess around 4 thousandths, which is on the tight side for a Fender. Another thing to check in guitars of this age is the amount of clearance over top of the first fret. The height of the nut slots, basically. In this case, there's some clearance on some strings, but like the D and G here, they're lying right on top of the surface of the fret. So a little clearance on the B string, and again, the E is basically flat on top as well. It's not producing horrible buzzes when played open, so it's fine. This is probably the minimum height it can be. We're getting away with. When we do a fret dress, we'll probably be removing a couple of thousandths, and we're going to regain something closer to factory spec. This is a hardtail Strat. There's no trem in this one. Very simple. Is there a different sound? Yes. I find that the trem springs add a certain kind of metallic overtone of their own, which is oftentimes missing in these, but I like them nonetheless. I think they sound good. I'm a fan, put it that way. It can be a useful exercise to measure the amount of relief in the neck using a notched straight edge to see what the actual board top is doing. We know there's around 4 to 5 thousandths relief in the tops of the frets, and in this case the neck surface is very straight. In fact, I think most of that relief is in the frets itself. It's on the bass side. Yeah, the treble side, I'm guessing if there is any relief at all, it's got to be like a thousandth. It's very flat. Measuring again now with the string tension off, see that there is virtually no movement. This is a very stiff neck, which is a good thing. And if there was, however, like a significant amount of back bow, I would probably want to put this into my neck jig to simulate the string tension, but because it's straight in both instances, not really necessary for doing this. I'll measure the frets themselves. These are not vintage width, obviously. These are like 92 thousandths, and probably higher than factory. From the 50s, yeah, these are about 50 thousandths tall. So there's plenty of material left to dress on these. Yeah, I think most electric guitarists will be happy with frets that are 35 thousandths and above. Get down to 30, there's some people who might find that too low. Down to 25, and yeah, you're definitely in the territory where no one wants to play it. So, there's plenty of material. This can be dressed a couple of times before it'll be necessary to replace these. Got my board taped up, grab my stick of juicy fruit. I always mark off the tops of the frets with the Sharpie. Some people like blue, I think because it reminds them of the die-chem machinist's bluing that people use when they're doing high-grade machine work. I use whatever I happen to have around. In this case, it's black. Let's look at something else for a moment, for variety's sake. Here is a little job that requires some special tool innovation. This is something that comes up every once in a while, specifically related to these old harmony guitars and trying to amplify them. Adding a standard acoustic pickup can be a bit tricky because for whatever reason, Harmony decided that using the same block for both the neck and the tail would be cost effective, maybe. I don't know. But ever since aftermarket acoustic pickups came into being, it's been an issue because this tail block here, it's really wide. And your standard TRS jack that we use for all of these things is not long enough to go through one of these. So the usual option is to drill a hole through the side of the instrument farther down past the block, hopefully gluing in a reinforcement pad of some kind and satisfying yourself that if you inadvertently hit the jack, you're not going to split the side of the guitar all the way up and around to the waist or beyond, because that's an issue. There are also some jacks that sort of have a cast metal disc and integral strap button that screw from the outside and provide both the strap button and jack thing that we enjoy so much, but they're not great to look at. We're used to seeing them on cheap imports from 1980, so no one really likes them. But there are a lot of transducer style pickups, sort of clones of the K&K on the market now. K&Ks have got ridiculously expensive in the last year. Like, holy cow, probably 40% increase in price. Anyway, these things start to look a little bit more inviting, but they have fairly short leads on them, so the wires won't end up bouncing against the back and making noise, and you don't have to bother with the little peel and stick clips that fall off all the time. But in a dreadnought sized guitar, to do this installation where you want to go through the side, it's not long enough. In this case, there's like a little 3mm jack, or 2.5. In other cases, it's just straight soldered to the jack itself, but there isn't enough room to get there. So that's an issue. I've seen people drill an oversized hole through the end block that you could fit one of these through and then screw on a Les Paul style jack plate, which, you know, can be okay depending on your perceptions. However, you know, this has come up enough that I want a quick and elegant solution. So I went looking specifically for a counterbore bit that makes a 3/4 inch hole with a flat bottom. That's kind of important. There are several available. They're not cheap. This is not a solution you'd use if this was going to ever be the only one you did. I'm going to have to make this pay for itself over several jobs. The nice thing is this one has a pilot bit that is 3/8 of an inch in diameter. Why is that useful? Because these guitars have been drilled for standard tapered end pins. And also there are quite a number of them that have been pre-drilled for the standard jack, this guy at 1/2 inch or 12mm, by people who didn't realize it was not going to work. So they remained. Sometimes they're plugged, other times they're just empty. I figure with a 3/8 inch diameter, I can make a bushing of some kind to take up the extra space in that case, and sort of hold the counterbore on center and not mess up the inside of the tail block a whole bunch. Not that anyone's going to see it, but you know, it's nice to keep the drill bit centered. So this thing, it reduces the amount of surface area the bit has to clear. Anyway, we'll see. I'll use the included bit to drill the pilot hole, realizing that eventually this hole will be enlarged to 12mm. So I'm going to start by going backwards. That prevents tear out around the edge. I have this short right-angled tool I use for measuring holes such as these. See, this end block is approximately 32mm, 31.5, which is, you know, 1.25 inches. And yeah, if you extend this jack to its farthest reaches, you're still not going to get there. You're a couple of threads short. A fairly robust little unit. Seems to be made in the USA. This is from Snappy Tools, not a sponsor. I have this 3/8 inch diameter piece of steel rod. This is actually hollow tube, which I used in making a custom screw remover, which some of you will remember from several months ago. And I'm going to cut off a length that will give me enough room to manipulate this from the outside of the guitar. Because it's a hollow tube, I can use this dowel to help me pull and position this thing through here. That's a little bit more snug than I want it. I'll slightly enlarge the hole. I'm going to make a mark on the shaft here. And then make another mark 1/4 inch towards the counterbore portion. With the drill in reverse, I can just pull until the mark becomes visible. This did not take long. And here's the result, which is a nicely centered countersink. It's got clean margins. The inner hole can now be enlarged to fit the barrel of the jack. You can see the customary attention to detail lavished on Harmony guitars. The brown stuff is urea fortified hide glue. The white stuff on the block is likely guano from some of the many vampire bats that reside in this guitar. So there, I can cinch up your standard issue barrel jack. Seems like a nice, clean, professional solution to a problem that's been bugging me for some time. Let's go back and look at the Strat some more. I'm so annoyed. I somehow did not press record when I was leveling the frets, so you get this footage from a guitar I did several months ago. It's all the same. I use a leveling beam. It's got 220 grit paper on it. As is customary, I put 2 layers of painter's tape over the 14th fret and went back, added more marker so I could see what I was doing, and I sanded a little bit of fall away into the last 4 or 5 frets. This helps to alleviate some issues with Fender necks tending to kick upward over the body. It's minimal, maybe 3/1000ths, but it makes bending a bit cleaner in the upper reaches. Recrowning helps to minimize the contact between the string and the fret top, centering it on a thin line right across the center of the fret. This is 1200 grit sandpaper. My initial strokes go along the whole board, sort of blending the slight facets that happen from the file, and then I start working longitudinally along the frets. People always ask why I don't use the Dremel and metal polishing compound. Chromium oxide, which is in most of those compounds, it's a super tiny particulate that gets thrown into the air, you breathe it in. Over time, it'll give you basically the equivalent to mesothelioma, COPD. And unfortunately, there's not going to be a class action lawsuit on behalf of guitar repair techs who voluntarily breathed it in, right? Everything we work with is toxic. I do my best to stay alive. Cleaned up the board, put some strings on. Here I'm giving them a bit of a stretchy. It's not actually a stretch. It's more like compacting the string windings on the string and also pulling them tight around the tuners. This gives you, a head start on tuning stability. And there we go. No more divots. Plays cleaner. Still plenty of height. These are only about 0.004 shorter than they were previously.